Welcome to another deep dive. We've got some really intriguing material for you today.
I am.
This one's going to be a mind bender. We're diving into E. Michael Jones' book. It's called Libido Dominandi, Sexual Liberation and Political Control.
Okay.
And Jones, he takes us on this historical journey, connecting all these seemingly random events and people to this idea, manipulating sexual desire for political power.
Really interesting.
So are you ready?
Let's do it.
All right. So the book kicks off with the Enlightenment, this era that was all about, reason and freedom for the individual. But Jones argues that this emphasis on freedom actually created a paradox, sort of like a vacuum that needed to be filled.
Like a societal version of Newton's third law?
Yeah, exactly. For every action, an equal and opposite reaction. As those traditional morals and religious structures started to, lose their grip, this need for new types of social control popped up.
I see. Makes sense.
So it's not just about, freedom or control, but about finding that balance between the two. Jones uses the chaos of the French Revolution as a prime example of this dynamic.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. It was like this giant social experiment, tossing out the old rules, embracing these new ideals, but then things got really violent and unstable fast.
Exactly. And out of that wreckage, sociology pops up as a new discipline.
Oh, interesting.
Right. Auguste Comte, he's often considered the father of sociology.
Okay. Yeah.
What's fascinating is that Comte saw sociology as this way to understand and manage this new social complexity. He wanted to apply scientific principles to studying society.
Wow. Okay, so this science of society became a way to bring order to all this rapid change.
Yeah, exactly. So we've got this backdrop of upheaval, this search for ways to keep things under control, and this is where things take a bit of a darker turn.
Uh-oh. How so?
This is where that concept of exploiting sex, using it as a tool for social control, that enters the picture.
Oh, wow.
Jones argues that controlling desire, and specifically sexual desire, becomes this way to control people, and by extension, society as a whole. He dives into the history of the Illuminati, not just as this shadow and secret society, but as a group that was really interested in using psychology to manipulate people.
Okay, this is where it gets juicy. We're talking Adam Weishaupt, secret rituals, and all that, right?
Oh, yeah. But Jones goes beyond the typical Illuminati stuff. He connects their ideas to Sigmund Freud, the father of psychoanalysis,
Right.
and explores how both Weishaupt and Freud were fascinated by the power of suggestion and the subconscious. They both wanted to understand how to influence people without them even realizing it.
Hold on, are you saying Freud, the talk therapy guy, he was interested in manipulation? I thought psychoanalysis was about helping people, not controlling them.
It's complicated. Psychoanalysis is all about, uncovering those hidden desires, bringing things to light. Both Freud and Carl Jung, his contemporary, they realized that this knowledge, this understanding of the subconscious could be used for good or for bad, for healing or for manipulation.
It's like they unlocked this powerful tool, one that can be used for good or evil.
Exactly. And this power struggle even played out between them. Part of the reason Freud and Jung split was because of their differing views on the subconscious and its potential for manipulation.
Ah, I see.
Freud was focused on individual desires and how they impact behavior. Jung, on the other hand, he was exploring this collective unconscious, like a realm of shared symbols and archetypes that could be tapped into for powerful effect.
Okay, so we've got psychology as a tool for understanding, but also for manipulating people's behavior.
Yeah.
So where do we go from there?
Well, this takes us from the shadowy world of secret societies to the more scientific realm of behaviorism. Enter John B. Watson, a psychologist who believed he could predict and control human behavior through conditioning. He's infamous for his Little Albert experiment, where he conditioned a baby to fear a white rat.
Oh, yeah. I remember learning about that in college. Groundbreaking, but also a bit ethically iffy, right? Is this where this obsession with control gets more explicit?
Oh, absolutely. Watson was convinced he could mold human behavior, like clay, shaping it through these carefully designed stimuli and responses. And what's interesting is that Jones suggests that Watson's own personal struggles, his own issues with controlling his impulses, might have fueled this obsession with controlling other people.
Huh. Like he was projecting his own internal struggle outward, trying to control the world around him.
That's an interesting way to put it. And this drive to control behavior takes a turn when Watson leaves the world of academia and joins the world of advertising.
Wait, advertising? What does psychology have to do with selling, soap and cigarettes.
Yeah. Well, it's all about understanding what makes people tick, right? Tapping into their desires and anxieties. Remember Edward Bernays, Sigmund Freud's nephew, the father of public relations.
Wrigley.
He's the one who orchestrated the Torches of Freedom campaign, encouraging women to smoke by linking smoking to liberation and empowerment.
Wow. So he was using psychology to sell a product. And a harmful one at that.
Exactly. It's crazy how these ideas about controlling desire, which started with, Enlightenment philosophers and secret societies, end up being used for something as mundane as advertising.
Yeah, that's wild. And I bet that's just the beginning, right?
Oh, just the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah.
This connection between psychology, manipulation, and consumerism, it's a big theme in Jones' work. He argues that we're constantly bombarded with messages designed to, exploit our desires and our insecurities to get us to buy things we don't need and want things we shouldn't.
That's a little unsettling when you think about it.
It is, isn't it? We like to think we make our own choices, but maybe we're being influenced in ways we don't even realize.
Makes you wonder.
It does. And this is something Jones really digs into when he gets to the topic of the sexual revolution.
The sexual revolution. Often it's presented as this time of liberation, free love. But Jones, he argues that it was also this period of intense social engineering where these powerful groups were shaping things, manipulating desires to meet their own goals.
It was a pretty bold statement. I mean, wasn't the sexual revolution all about breaking free from those old constraints? Empowering people to make their own choices?
That was definitely a big part of it. But Jones, he digs deeper, exploring how liberation and control, how they play off each other. He brings in figures like Wilhelm Reich.
Okay.
He was this psychoanalyst who thought that uninhibited sexual expression, that was the key to personal and social liberation.
Interesting.
Yeah, his ideas were pretty radical back then. But they gained some traction, especially with folks who saw the sexual revolution as this way to overturn traditional morality, create a more, egalitarian society.
So there's this push for sexual freedom, but Jones is saying there were also these forces working to steer and control this movement.
Exactly. He contrasts Reich's utopian vision with what happened in the Soviet Union.
Oh, okay.
Where they initially embraced sexual liberation, but it led to some not so great outcomes, a rise in STDs, families breaking down, and it caused this backlash, a push for tighter control over sexual behavior. It shows that even revolutions, they can have these unintended consequences. And that individual freedom, it can sometimes clash with what society needs as a whole.
Yeah, that's a great point. It's we're back to that back and forth between freedom and control we talked about before. So how does this play out in the sexual revolution in the West?
Jones, he argues that the sexual revolution in the West, it was shaped by all these different social, political, and economic forces. He points to the push for contraception and abortion, linking those movements to people like Margaret Sanger and the eugenics movement.
Oh, Sanger. She's such a complex figure. I mean, her work on birth control was groundbreaking, but her connection to eugenics it raises a lot of ethical concerns.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what makes Jones's work so interesting. He tackles these tough and controversial issues head on. He makes us look past the simple narratives and grapple with the nuances, the contradictions of history.
So it's not about just, cheering for the sexual revolution or condemning it. It's about understanding the forces that shaped it, the good and the bad, the winners and the losers. It's about asking those tough questions and being willing to face uncomfortable truths.
Right. Jones doesn't shy away from the darker parts of the sexual revolution. He spends a lot of time exploring the commodification of sex.
Yeah.
And the rise of pornography.
This is where things get really interesting and a little unsettling, to be honest. Pornography, it's everywhere. You can't escape it. But Jones is suggesting that this wasn't just, society loosening up. He's saying there were people deliberately pushing pornography into the mainstream.
Yeah. He traces how pornography went from the fringes to, gradual acceptance. Exploring how legal decisions like Roth v. United States, which blurred the lines between sex and obscenity, how that paved the way. He also connects the rise of porn to the work of Alfred Kinsey, known for his controversial research on human sexuality.
Yeah, Kinsey's work was groundbreaking. He challenged taboos and helped people see sexuality in a new light. But his methods, they've been criticized too, especially his reliance on data from prisoners and sex offenders.
Right, and that's one of Jones's key points. He questions whether Kinsey's data was it really representative of everyone, and if his personal views might have skewed the results. Jones also talks about the Mies Commission, formed in the 80s to investigate the effects of porn.
The Mies Commission, that was pretty controversial, right? I remember a lot of debate about their findings, especially the claim that porn leads to more violence against women.
Oh, yeah, that was a hot topic. And Jones jumps right into it, exploring all sides of the argument and the whole political fight over regulating pornography. He highlights how the porn industry, which had become super powerful and profitable, fought hard against any attempts to limit its reach.
It's a classic example of how money and power can influence things, even when there's evidence of harm. So we've got the sexual revolution, the commodification of sex, and the rise of porn. How does this all tie back to political control?
Jones argues that these trends, they've had a huge impact on our politics.
Yeah.
They've led to the sexualization of politics and the erosion of moral authority. He uses some powerful examples to show this, like the case of the Immaculate Heart nuns.
The Immaculate Heart nuns, I'm not familiar with that.
It's a fascinating case study. Jones uses it to explore sexuality, religion, and social change altogether. He describes how these nuns, a Catholic order in L.A., got caught up in the cultural upheaval of the 60s and 70s. They embraced a lot of the ideals of the sexual revolution, trying out new forms of spirituality and challenging traditional ideas of authority.
Sounds like they were trying to balance their faith with the changing times.
Right. But Jones says this openness to new ideas also made them vulnerable to manipulation. He describes how encounter groups and psychological techniques, promoted as personal growth, were used to undermine traditional religious authority and push social change within the order.
It's almost like a miniature version of what was happening in the bigger culture. The sexual revolution, it wasn't just about individual freedom. It was also about challenging the existing power structures and creating new ones.
Exactly. And Jones sees this happening in politics, too. He analyzes how the sexual revolution got mixed up with different political movements, often with unexpected results. He mentions the controversy around Humanae Vitae.
Okay.
The papal encyclical that reaffirmed the Catholic Church's stance against contraception. This document caused a lot of disagreement. And Jones points out the role of people like Charles Curran, a theologian who challenged the Church's view in driving that dissent.
Shows that even within the church, there were these huge disagreements about sexuality and the limits of individual freedom.
Right. And these debates, they weren't just in religious circles. They spilled over into politics, shaping how we talk about things like abortion, contraception, even sexual morality itself. Jones goes on to analyze how sexual liberation became a shield for politicians. He even uses Bill Clinton as an example of how accusations of misconduct were brushed aside in this more permissive climate.
Interesting. It's like the rules of the game had changed. What used to be scandalous or immoral became more acceptable, or at least easier to excuse after the sexual revolution.
And that change in attitudes, it had a big impact on how we talk about politics, how we judge our leaders, and the very nature of power itself.
Wow, we've covered so much ground. From the French Revolution to the Soviet Union, from the rise of psychology to the commodification of sex, from those Immaculate Heart nuns to Bill Clinton. Yeah. It's incredible how Jones ties all these seemingly unrelated things together.
Yeah, it really shows how deep his scholarship goes. He's not just giving us this dry historical analysis. It's like he's telling a story that makes us think critically about the forces that shaped our world and the choices we face today.
It's definitely a book that'll stick with me. It's made me way more aware of how power works. Not just in politics, but in our daily lives.
That's the thing about Jones's work. It challenges us to think for ourselves, to question what we're told, and to be more active in shaping our lives in the world.
Absolutely. And I think that's a great takeaway for our listeners, too.
Yeah. Keep exploring these ideas. Have those important conversations. And never stop questioning the narratives you're being fed.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Until next time, keep diving deep.